How much does height matter for centre-backs in football? Franco Baresi and Fabio Cannavaro were both 5'9", and both very much world-class. Now they are the exceptions most cited, but suspicion towards a lack of size in that position remains. When Manchester United agreed to pay about £47 million for Ajax centre-back Lisandro Martinez, there were also many who questioned whether the Argentina international was worth the outlay, and more so now given his difficult start in the Premier League. But do we overemphasise the importance of height in defenders? Well, it depends. Brentford defender Ben Mee is 6 foot tall and considered short for a centre-back. But he thinks size is becoming less relevant and that technical and athletic abilities are equally pertinent. Former Brighton striker Glenn Murray agrees, but wonders how long that will be the case. You don't know how the game is going to evolve, he says. If people see a weakness where all back fours are under 6 foot, then someone will think, right, I'm going to start by buying some 6'4" centre forward and putting the ball in the box. Defending is more technical now, says Mee. With centre-halves called on less often to win aerial challenges, there is often more focus on how accomplished a player is with their feet, when in possession, than on how strong they are in the air. Reading's head of football operations, Mark Bowen, says that defenders are really expected to be more like midfielders in profile and have to be comfortable getting it off the keeper and initiating play. And that seems right, with plenty of former fullbacks occasionally moonlighting on the outside of back threes and not suffering through lack of traditional defensive size. Swansea City's set-piece coach Andy Parslow also makes an important point about determining which attributes matter. It's going to depend on what your team's profile is. What's the playing style, he asks, with the implication that different tactical approaches place contrasting emphasis on the size of a defender. A team like Manchester City don't need to worry so much about defending set pieces because they've got the ball so often they don't defend many of them. Parslow mentions Burnley, under previous manager Sean Dyche, as being one of those teams that needed centre-backs of a particular physical profile because they played in a low block. But how then does that tally with having Ben Mee as a fixture at centre-back for the past few seasons? There are certain players that when they go and attack the ball or attack a cross, nothing else in the world exists in that second other than them and the ball, says Parslow. I think Ben Mee is one of those, who has that mentality and those attributes, and that's when you can be a couple of inches shorter and still be more effective. Mee also says he's developed techniques and tactics that help him to work around his size and will make specific tactical plans for games when he knows he'll be up against bigger players. Usually the tall players don't jump a lot because they've never really had to. So a lot of the time you're trying to get an early jump on them and using your body to get above them. Or if a player is quite clever at using their body, they're always looking to physically disrupt you before you head the ball. So you're trying to move them around a bit more so that they take their eye off the ball and that you can go and win it. Mee also echoes Parslow in saying the aggression side of it is equally important. When you're giving up something against your opponent, you need to add in other areas. It's important in any position really. Outside the very top players, you're always giving up something, whether it be pace, cleverness, strength or power. It requires compensation in other areas, and a lower centre of gravity can sometimes provide it. In the modern game, that's what it's about. Turning, twisting, recovery runs, Mee adds. There are a lot of teams like that to press high now. So getting it on the half turn and being able to run backwards towards your own goal is definitely an advantage. As a more physical striker, Murray's initial instinct would be to say that he'd rather play against a smaller centre-back. But in reality, he says they are often more agile and quicker over the ground. They were less likely to play to my strengths, he explains. They'd try nipping in front of me or easing me under the ball. I often found that smaller defenders were harder to pin. They didn't allow you to do it because they knew that that was their weakness. So they'd try to step in front, or they had really good timing and a great leap. Another way of redressing an imbalance is through team organisation. For example, when Lisandro Martinez's former Ajax came up against Borussia Dortmund in last season's Champions League, the defender was assisted by a midfielder who would drop whenever a long ball was played in towards 6'4" Erling Haaland, disrupting the striker and allowing Martinez more time and space in the air. That's the kind of thing I'd do all the time, says Mee. When you come up against good players in the air, I'd always try and put a centre midfielder on toes, as we say. If he's concentrating on the man, it takes his eye off the ball that's coming and allows you that free run to go and win the ball, using the player in front of you as a bit of a blocker. Mark Bowen recognises that height is not everything, and smaller players develop other ways and attributes that allow them to compete. But he says size is still one of the first things coaches and managers look at when a player is presented to them, and admits that there are still unconscious biases for coaches around height and negative assumptions about smaller players. Asked the same question, Murray says that without height on his side, the player would need to be exceptional at everything else. But also stresses the importance of context. Look at Harry Maguire. He's the archetypal centre-back, strong, physical, tall, dominant. But he hasn't really suited the way they play. You can't put any sort of player in any position, and if you don't play to their strengths, then they're not going to look as good as they've done elsewhere. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic brings you the best sports journalism in the world in a personalised experience, connecting you with the stories and teams that you care about the most. There's coverage of 13 sports, plus direct access to world-class journalists through live Q&As, discussions and podcasts. Not to mention, it's all ad-free. And you can try it now for free for 30 days by clicking the link in the description.